Do I regret Emilie? The answer is absolutely yes, because this character really is only useful for Kinich. A lot of people try and gas her up when I say that, and they're like, I like using her and she does a lot of off-field damage, but I'm gonna be flat out honest with you. This off-field damage that she does is okay, but it's not, like insane, oh my god, like Miss Coffee level support. Like, we're talking about using burn. A lot of people are forgetting the opportunity cost when you use burn, which is you're not using melt or vape. Now, in a specific Stygian onslaught, like where we have the lava dragon statue, that's no opportunity cost. You're gonna use burn. But, is it still worth 200 summons? And I'm gonna say no. It just isn't. I fully do not like this character. I've never really been able to fully use her. And even when I say she's good for Kinich, it's really mainly for, she's good for Kinich to do the 5th hit. But, I mean, I'm gonna flat out be honest with you guys. When I was doing the lava dragon statue, I couldn't get Kinich to do the 5th hit for his life, bro. I was trying to hold E, then, quickly, let go. But it just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. I don't get why. But it would just be like, oh, you're holding E? Like, and it would just sit there for like 5 hours. Just waiting and waiting. Just trying to process the fact that I was holding the E. And, yeah, that never worked out for me. So, Emilie's benefit is heavily, pattered down when, Kinich can't even use it. And even when we're talking about, Emilie, you can sometimes get Kinich to, do the 5th hit without doing any holdies. You can just, flat out do it with his E skill, right? You just pop his Q skill at the right time, right? But again, I was still unable to do that in the, Stygian Onslaught because the energy issues, man. There was never a good time to pop Kinich's E skill or Q skill. I mean, there just wasn't a time. So it ended up becoming like well, you didn't really need it, right? You didn't really need this character to help him with that. And that's also assuming that you're not going to be having the burn, right? Because normally, his team would be Fiorina instead of Emilie, right? But honestly, that is unusable with, Stygian, right? So there's a lot of things you can say, like, is for Stygian, but you have to realize that certain things with Stygian will not stay, right? And, Emilie being as good as she is right now will not stay when burn is not a required element or, reaction to use. I'm sorry to tell you, but like Emilie is not going to be anywhere near a top 10 list for Stygian. She isn't. She doesn't do enough, right? The opportunity cost, like I said, for doing, missing out on melt or vape, it is way too high for basically any character that she actually wants to be used with. I just personally, from what I've seen, Emilie just doesn't do enough, right? She simply doesn't do enough. I am incredibly tired, right? So I might be, I might be a little bit too harsh on her, but like genuinely, I don't really see the point in summoning for a character who, will sit on your account, be useful once every 12 months. It's not a thing that I'm gonna tell people to go for. I really don't see a thing. I really do think this character is a full regret character. Normally I use her on Staff of Homa, and Miss Coffee has taken that sense, so that's even another issue with her, right? If I'm using Miss Coffee on like Abyss or something, right, and I just she doesn't have her weapon anymore, right? I could in theory get Emilie's weapon, but do I want to summon on a weapon banner just for Emilie's weapon? No, I frankly, I don't. I know it's an insane possibility that I may not want to summon on the weapon banner just for Emilie so she can have her weapon. And her weapon is good to a certain extent. Like, it's a good stat stick, I feel like, because 33% crit rate with 15% attack, that's not something you're getting out of every single weapon, right? Like Zhao's weapon, I mean, Zhao's weapon is pretty good. It is 22% crit rate, but it's not 33%, right? Skyward isn't. None of these weapons here are well, actually this might be Staff. Senna's weapon might be 33% crit rate. It's 44%. So it is a little bit of a trade-off because it is very low base attack, and generally that is not good. But I mean, you also have to gain a lot of elemental mastery rather than, just 33% crit rate and then, whatever. So 22% crit rate for Arlecchino, and then you have, Emilie's weapon, obviously. And then let me look at, Miss Coffee's weapon. It's crit damage. So yeah, you get crit. You can basically get the crit damage version fusion with Miss Coffee, but it's only 12% attack. And you also have to be off field and stuff. You know, I will definitely sit here and say, like, you know, Emilie's weapon is not that bad. Right? I would say, like, if you're losing to its weapon, to that weapon, you're probably not doing too bad, right? Like, that's not a bad weapon to get on your account. It is a good filler weapon for characters that, you know, like Eon-san or something, right? It's just a good weapon to have. Skirk, how you doing? So it's a good weapon to have, I would say. I feel like overall people do definitely, you know, seem to not really like it, or maybe just don't want to, you know, like it. I don't really get it, but I would definitely say that, you know, Emilie, it's just full regret, man. It's like, I just don't see this character being useful when we have Lolly in the game, honestly. Like, because the big thing is, like, the pyro characters are really what you're looking at, because Alhaitham is not being a Dendro DPS and doing burn, right? And then obviously we've talked about Kinich already, where he's just not, you know, he really isn't there, right? It's, you know, the support ability that, you know, she's providing, it's not that, right? It's just not something that you're gonna look at and be like, oh wow, that's what we need for Kinich, you know? Like, it's just, there's not that much of a difference. And unless you need burn like you do in Stygian right now, I think it's just a bad decision to summon for this character, because she just isn't useful. She hasn't been useful, right? I'm be honest, for a long time on my account, this character, I just didn't use her with Kinich, even, you know, because I wasn't aware that even without doing all the hold shenanigans, that, you know, Kinich would still be able to do all of the, you know, Kinich would still be able to do all of the, you know, 5th hit, right? I didn't know without the hold shenanigans. I thought, you know, you would need to use Emilie and the hold shenanigans in order to get the 5th hit, but that is not the case. And, you know, that is something that I, you know, did not realize. So for a long time, I didn't use Kinich with Emilie, right? So I would constantly just use Furina, because I've done the damage test with a, you know, 4-hit combo, and really, I think Emilie came out slightly ahead. But when we're talking about a dedicated support for the character that you're using, it shouldn't be slightly ahead. We're talking about someone who should look like Miss Coffee. That is what we're talking about. You know, I really feel like Emilie should be giving some sort of, you know, Dendro res decrease, right? She does have Deepwood, but just in her base kit, she should have done Dendro res decrease, because this character is made for Kinich, by the way. If you don't think that, then you're dumb. Simply put, she came out the update right before Kinich, and coincidentally, she used Burn, and Kinich used Burn. Oh my god, you know, like, they both, you know, worked in synergy together, right? She does provide energy for Kinich, which is something you could say, but you could also just run Favonius on Furina, which, it's whatever. But I mean, to be honest, Kinich isn't really a character who wants to always use his burst. Well, depending on if you're going for the 5th hit, because, you know, again, even with his burst tech, you know, I couldn't get that up, you know, with, you know, Kinich. You know, I would need more energy recharge for Stygian, right? I have 128. That's insane. So I really feel like Emilie has kind of been a waste of summons on my account, because she really just hasn't functioned good at all, really. And, you know, her weapon would increase her damage, right? I do like comparing characters with their weapons or their C1. I just really feel like her weapon, it's not going to be that huge of an increase to make me use this character, right? Because again, you're going up against Melt with Lolly, and other than that, it's Kinich. Like that, like, I don't think you know, I have to stress this as much as possible, right? Like, this legitimately, one of her only teams is Kinich, and then if you choose to go for pyro teams that use burn, right, then you're giving up massive amounts of damage, right? You're just giving up massive amounts, right? You use Mavwika burn, the amount of damage you lose is like millions, actually. Same thing for Arlecchino, probably. Like, I don't necessarily know, but I could assume that it's probably millions that you lose from using Arlecchino burn. Like, legitimately, you know, she just isn't there. Maybe if she gave Pyro Res, you know, skip out on the Dendro Res, give Pyro Res decrease. She doesn't do that, though, right? At least I don't think she does. That would be really embarrassing if she did. But yeah, she gives herself Pyro Res just for burning, but she doesn't, like, give, you know, Pyro Resistance, you know, shred. I feel like that would make her a lot better, and would make, you know, and would have made, you know, Pyro DPSs with Emilie a lot more viable. But right now, I'm just looking at it and I'm like, I would never use Emilie. When I'm building a serious team to take on Stygian, I'm not going to be using Emilie ever, right? Until the Lava Dragon statue is back in Stygian, or, you know, right now, obviously, it's in Stygian. I really don't think I would ever use this character. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Emilie. I really feel like she's not there, right? She's, you know, she needed to be better. She needed to be more looking like Miss Coffee, but she doesn't, right? So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.